Don't do it, DJ.
Hey again, thank you guys so much for choosing another one of my videos. I appreciate you, I love you, and I hope you're having a great day. So today we're looking at Valkyr. Valkyr is a highly mobile, melee-focused Berserker Warframe who can keep herself alive forever as long as she stays within the heat of battle. Able to quickly pounce from enemy to enemy with RIPLINE, grouping them together, sustaining her offense and defense with WARCRY, marking enemies for death with PARALYSIS, and if you're not wanting to go with traditional melee options, you can pop your Exalted Claws to tear apart any opposition within seconds. With Valkyr, I'll be honest, it's more like a single second. This frame is very good, and I'm super excited to cover her for you guys today. If you don't know, they are doing a free Valkyr Prime giveaway on Twitch for TennoCon soon, so that's why I'm making this guide. Hopefully you enjoy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let's get into it, starting with acquisition. So thankfully Valkyr is one of the easier ones to acquire. Base Valkyr is acquired on Themisto Jupiter from the Alid V boss fight. I'll put those drop rates on the screen. Basically, it's going to be a quick farm, unless you get, even if you're on the unlucky side of a normal distribution here, you will be able to get Valkyr fairly quickly. Likewise, Valkyr, I believe, is in the Duviri circuit rotation. So if you get lucky in that regard, you can grab her, maybe get a free augment, couple rewards. If you are a new player, I generally recommend doing circuit almost no matter what, but in terms of whether you should be doing this or getting her in circuit, you definitely should be going to Themisto, farming Alid V. You get neural sensors from that fight as well, so it's going to be way worth farming her. I promise, it's a good choice. Starting with Valkyr's passive. Valkyr accumulates rage when hitting or killing enemies with melee weapons, increasing her melee damage up to 300%. Taking fatal damage when the rage meter is above 150%, consumes the meter, preventing death and granting 5 seconds of invulnerability. This is what many players will refer to as a death gate. Essentially, you build this meter up, it gives you damage, but not only that, as long as that meter is above 150%, which as long as you're always in melee, as you should be doing with this Warframe, you will avoid death, and it'll consume the meter, but the meter is also easy to build up, and you get 5 seconds of invulnerability, meaning you can build it up really quick. This is probably the best job at a true Berserker that DE has ever done, and this is a reworked mechanic. This is totally new to reworked Valkyr, and I think it's great. Amazing ability. Hopefully they can do more with this design space in the future. Moving on to her first ability, RIPLINE. Valkyr's first ability, RIPLINE, fires out a wire in a direction, like so. If it connects with the surface, Valkyr will go zipping towards it. If it connects with an enemy, enemies around the target will be pulled into a group, followed up with a light attack. Like so. Depending on what melee you have equipped. This ability achieves everything you'd want in a melee-based frame, allowing for high mobility right into grouping, allowing you to clear enemies out quickly, stringing in, sliding heavy attacks. So as you can see, I group the enemies up, and I can slide heavy. They're nice and grouped up for whatever kind of gameplay I want to utilize here. A couple notes. Valkyr maintains momentum while zipping on the wire, allowing you to bullet jump out of it and continue bursting forwards. This takes a little bit of skill, I would say, but if you can look, as you can see, I was able to maintain some of my momentum there, but it's a bit of a skill. It's a bit of a skill, and you just go so fast. It's quite difficult. Be mindful of the positions the enemies are in. You want to aim for the center of mass, right? So if I spawn these enemies here, I don't want to aim for the guy on the far right here, because then I might miss this whole section here. But if I aim my RIPLINE towards the center of the group, I will successfully pull them all in. And then casting RIPLINE within 1 second of the additional 1 second of the original will give you this little combo meter. And the combo meter, basically this increases the damage and decreases the energy it costs. So you can kind of, like Amazing Spider-Man 2, your way around everywhere. It's incredibly fun. But this ability is very solid. Basically, it's your way to move around from enemy to enemy, and it also at the same time groups them. So this is an amazing ability for Valkyr to have. The augment for RIPLINE is called Swingline. RIPLINE has no energy cost while airborne, and Valkyr gains additional parkour velocity on top of that. This one can be fun, but I don't think it's worth the mod slot at all. But especially because you can get such high efficiency using the combo meter and just, you know, a solid build with RIPLINE, there just isn't really any sense in using this augment. Another quick thing to note that I forgot to note is that you actually move faster towards enemies than you do towards surfaces. So even if you're using RIPLINE for just pure movement, I would strongly recommend that you aim for enemies anyways. It'll help you a whole lot in the long run. Valkyr's second ability is called WARCRY. Valkyr gives her teammates a bunch of armor, and it's actually really basic ability, but it is quite strong. So you'll see that I'm using the Phallus here, which is generally a pretty slow melee scythe. Not much in the way of attack speed modding, but when I hit WARCRY and scream like a crazy person, I gain a ton of attack speed. I'm able to swing this normally clunky weapon incredibly fast, which is really useful. Likewise, I can see my armor buff in the upper right hand there. Valkyr has a ton of base armor. WARCRY is a great vehicle for survival. Not only does it give that attack speed, which helps stack your passive faster, so you can get your death gate, but also the armor percentage buff in combination with her already high base armor makes for an incredibly strong ability. This is also, you know, it's given to all your teammates within infinity range, which is huge. They won't always utilize the melee attack speed, but they will definitely be utilizing the armor, whether they like it or not. The augment for WARCRY is called Eternal War. This basically increases the duration as you kill enemies with your melee weapon. This is very strong. It sounds kind of basic, but in terms of quality of life, energy economy, WARCRY is actually a very expensive ability. This is really good. And the only con that would, you know, normally present itself here is like, oh, what if I get a, you know, multi-augmented buff or a relic crack buff? WARCRY is recastable, meaning that you can keep your strongest WARCRY available basically at all times. So yeah, I would say this augment is one you should strongly consider, and you will find it in most of my Valkyr builds. Valkyr's third ability is Paralysis. Valkyr releases a shout that stuns and slows enemies, opening them with finisher attacks while increasing their melee vulnerability. So these enemies are now going to take increased melee damage from any melee source, including my teammates. So pretty strong, which means, you know, as you could infer, the gameplay loop would probably look a little bit like this: RIPLINE together, shout, and then, you know, throw in a heavy attack, slide attack, whatever you decide to do. This ability is very good in my opinion. It's quite good. It's a low energy cost. It's pretty quick to cast, but I would say a little longer than I'd like. In most builds, Paralysis is probably what you're going to be taking off. If you need to take anything off at all, you know, there are just better options. Valkyr is not hurting in terms of dealing damage. Like, she's already overkilling enemies by like Lord knows how many times, so it's best to like cover other facets of her kit to make the experience like more comfortable or fun, as opposed to something you kind of have to spam cast a little bit because you're killing so many enemies. So again, while, you know, Valkyr doesn't need a Helminth ability, I would say this would be the slot that I would take off in order to add a Helminth ability. Now, the augment for Paralysis, I've given a lot of deep thought to. Basically, it increases the stun duration and makes enemies group up under the effect of Paralysis. Initially, when I recorded it, I think it's kind of ass. I don't think it's worth taking. But if for some reason you want to remove what I think is the most fun part of Valkyr's kit, which is RIPLINE, if you wanted to remove RIPLINE for a Helminth ability instead of Paralysis, you would absolutely do that. And then you would exchange the mod slot for the ability slot of RIPLINE and put your Helminth there. That's totally an option. I'm just promoting something different. It's not a playstyle I would personally adopt. Valkyr's fourth ability is called Hysteria. Valkyr pops out her exalted claws called Valkyr Talons, draining energy per second. Valkyr is immune to status effects while Hysteria is active, and the WARCRY armor buff is tripled. Likewise, Valkyr restores flat health per attack, and these claws are moddable. Pretty strong. You're going to be spending most of your time in this stance sliding, but this stance isn't awful, and it's really strong. So like, let's take a look here. If I group them with RIPLINE and use my claws, you know, that's not even full combo, no priming. I don't have a companion on right now. This ability is really strong, and again, you get this weird little like somersault when you do your default jump. I love it. I think it's great. I think it's great flavor. It makes you feel like more of a crazy person, which is kind of how you want to feel when you're playing a Berserker Warframe. But in terms of augments, we've got two. So Enraged, Valkyr gains bonus damage and critical chance during Hysteria, but it changes from a channeled ability to a duration ability that gains a matching cooldown. This is not great. Like, if Warframe was a different game where we didn't want Hysteria on all the time and we wanted to burst down certain priority targets, that's fine, but everything dies just the same to Valkyr Talons, and it's just, this isn't really worth using. If you want to use it, that's totally fine. I'm just giving you my opinion, which I think is quite educated. Actually, the second one, Hysterical Assault, is also probably not worth using, but it sounds really fun. Valkyr can jump around in Hysteria by meleeing while aiming. This allows her to like gap close, providing a parkour velocity and sprint speed buff. This one sounds like fun, but you also have RIPLINE, which also groups, so it's like, it could be fun. Again, all these, I'm here to teach you how to mod, not what to mod, but I'm just giving you like my general suggestion as someone with quite a few hours in this game. So that's Hysteria. Let's take a look at the builds here and kind of how we get Valkyr operating at maximum efficiency. Taking a look at helmet options, we've got a couple of good ones. Valkyr, I would say, is a frame who does not at all need a helmet ability. So if you don't have this system very well invested in, or you're a newer player, just whatever, don't stress this too much. You can just skip right to the build. We have the common culprits, which are Roar, Nourish, and Eclipse. Roar is just a huge amount of damage, especially you will want Roar if you are using some sort of melee influence weapon. That will be really strong because Roar can buff all of those electric procs and the status procs that you're moving around using influence. Eclipse is really good for additional DR. This will make you like even more immortal than you were, and then you can use the damage version of it if you want. Nourish is good for energy economy. It gives you viral if you're using Hysteria. You'll see that my setup is similar. It uses Nourish there. Silence is great. Silence will stop Eximus from being annoying and cringe, which your team will appreciate since you'll actually have some range in there to deactivate their abilities. Also, Violence won't be able to turn off your Hysteria, which is incredibly important. Thankfully, Valkyr's Deathgate is actually like a passive, so it cannot be nullified. This is like incredibly important, and I should have touched on that earlier, but it's a very important part of our kit. But yeah, there's tons of options you can go for. Just the real basic ones are, you know, Roar, Nourish, Eclipse. They're great, but really whatever you want, whatever fits with your aesthetic that you're trying to build, perfect. There is no wrong answer here, nor does Valkyr need a helmet ability really at all. And then before we get into the build, I forgot to mention, Wrathful Advance can be really good. Just if you are using Valkyr's Talons, their crit chance is high enough to where you kind of get diminishing returns with the Wrathful Advance, and so it's probably worth investing in damage elsewhere. But if you're not using Talons and you have a lower crit chance weapon, Wrathful Advance can be really worth using. I can't tell you what to mod. You mod however you want. I can only just teach, but I'm just kind of letting you know that crit chance can have diminishing returns if you exceed way too high. You could have the reddest crits in the world though. I don't care. Just be happy, whatever. I'm showing you two builds here today. They don't vary much at all. It's just a playstyle that changes. I think that this is a pretty strong build, and let's go from mod to mod. Kind of break down what we got going on here. So, Steel Charge, most obvious option. This is better than the power strength buff. This is better than most things on a melee frame. It also gives additional modding capacity for some reason. I don't know why Steel Charge does that, but it does. Power Drift, this is a flex slot for Exilus, whatever you like. Parkour Velocity, Cunning Drift is huge here. The additional range, that might actually be, I might swap to that in the future, but don't think about this too much. Intensify, you can go Umbral, you can go Archon, you can go regular. And in my other build, I actually go Precision. But here I go Archon because Hysteria is able to replenish her health, and if I keep note of when this procs, which I don't always do a perfect job of, I could recast a Warcry, recast a Nourish with additional strength. 30% strength is quite good. Adaptation provides additional damage resist when armor isn't cutting it. It's generally quite helpful. You could also switch this with an armor mod here, especially if you're running Umbral, because then you can run the Umbral Fiber and the Umbral Intensify, and that will they'll buff each other, which is really, really strong. But this is just a setup I've chosen here. Valkyr's incredibly high base armor makes building armor really, really way more worth it than it traditionally would be. Blind Rage, we don't need the efficiency that much. Eternal War helps our energy econ, not having to cast Paralysis often, despite its low energy cost. Actually helps our econ a lot. Blind Rage is really good here, and it doesn't hurt Hysteria too much because we use primed continuity to counter that, which means we just have that base drain per second of 5, which we can easily manage using my subsim here, Nourish, which continuity also helps with. Eternal War here is really good. You don't have to run this. Warcry is recastable. It's not too much of a pain. But I think it really helps with energy econ. You're just killing so many enemies. I so rarely run out of Warcry when using this. And if I get a buff again, whether it's like a Relic Cracked or Lone Guardian on Conjunction Survival, I'm always able to get it back up. It's not a big deal. And then really important, Stretch and Augur Reach. I would recommend running both of these in every single Valkyr build you use. This is just for RIPLINE. This allows you to group in enemies within like 16 meters radius. It's just really good. You want to be able to group competently. That's what makes Valkyr's rework especially good. RIPLINE, in my opinion, is like the main thing that made this frame feel so much better to play. And then Augur Secrets is a flex slot, like I feel like Augur Secrets always is. I just like the additional strength, but if you want Augur Message for the duration, you know, whatever you decide, absolutely go for it. For Arcanes here, anything that boosts like your survivability, armor, anything that has to do with melee, whatever you want. Here I find these two to be the most fun. Melee attack speed and Arcane Battery. This is Arcane Strike, Arcane Battery. Arcane Battery is really good because we get so much armor after Warcry, Hysteria, all of it. We just get so much energy. 525 is what we have currently with no primed flow just because of Battery, and this gets buffed additionally with Warcry and then buffed additionally again with Hysteria. Arcane Battery, this is like one of the highest, besides like Corvex, I guess maybe, this is one of the highest value Arcane Battery placements we can have here. The second build here does not vary much at all. This is my no Hysteria build. This is, I focus on just using whatever melee weapon I decide, and there's not much in terms of swapping. So the main swaps are Precision Intensified, because Roar is very strong. I want to funnel as much strength into Roar as possible, because Warcry doesn't need a ton of stats, and Paralysis, again, it's there. Valkyr has an excess of damage. Like, we're already killing enemies by like 10 times their health bar, so Paralysis is like a little unnecessary, but it's there. And the main reason that I chose to take Hysteria out is so that I can use Precision Intensify to get a stronger Roar. And then here I use Energy Nexus actually, because I'm missing Nourish, which would normally help with my energy economy. I opt for the Energy Nexus here instead of the Augur Secrets. The reason you don't run Energy Nexus here is because you have a Drain ability, which counters Energy Nexus and makes it difficult to replenish that energy. But this build is otherwise the same. So we're going to take a look at our Archon Shards and a couple of other options here. So taking a gander at our Archon Shards, and then we're going to take a look at the Talons build as well. So we have the main ones you want here are purples and yellows, I'd say. Again, Valkyr will love the additional duration from reds and the power strength from reds. Melee frames, just purple or violet, I guess, Archon Shards have made melee frames like so broken. The additional critical damage with max energy over 500, Valkyr with battery, or flow if you decide to use that, we'll just always have this buff active, and it's insane. And then I just have 2 more parkour velocity shards because I'm playing a melee frame, and even though I have a gap closer, I want to be able to move around as much as humanly possible. So let's take a look at our Talons build here. This is by no means the best build possible. I don't even have the Exilus slot here for Tennokai, which I would normally love to engage with. Melee influence is not what we want here. It is not. What we want here is melee exposure. Melee influence, the status chance on Valkyr's Talons is just too low. And so exposure makes it so that as you're casting RIPLINE, which you're going to be casting all the time, you're able to stack some corrosive damage. The reason we go for corrosive here, I think gas is actually like very good here as well, and I might even swap to it, to be honest. But corrosive is good because it has a good damage profile against targets that Valkyr would struggle against, which are armored targets. Now, struggle is very like subjective. It's not really struggling, but like on paper, in theory, the slash is good. So you want corrosive as well to deal additional damage to those armored targets, because theoretically she'd struggle against it. That's like in big heavy quotation marks, not a big deal. And then magnetic rush gives some attack speed in addition to helping with overguarded enemies, which are cringe and annoying. So yeah, this build's very basic. It could definitely be optimized. It can definitely be built around a little better, but I think this is a strong build. I would lean towards corrosive or gas. That way you can use the primed fever strike mod to give yourself more base damage. Hopefully they release primed versions of like shocking touch and these other mods, that way people don't feel as pressured, like they get a little build variety. But overall, that's pretty important. So looking into the focus school, you got one choice basically, and it's Naramon. Naramon makes Valkyr and all melee frames infinitely more comfortable to play. This is primarily for power spike. Melee combo counter now decays while out of combat by 5 every few seconds instead of depleting completely. You won't have any energy econ problems. You could run Matter Eye if you want. I'm not going to say Naramon's completely unnecessary, but the comfort that it gives you is absolutely immense. In terms of weapons that are good on Valkyr, I'll be real, you don't need guns. If you want one, like I keep the Strun on me in case things get silly. The lay them on there in case I run into problems. The main reason I'm running these two is because I was unlocking the final incarnate on my Thalus, and here's my Thalus build. This is a melee influence setup, so I do run Roar like I mentioned earlier. Those are kind of the two differences here. Very basic build, not much thought into it. Electricity for influence, magnetic for overguarded enemies being cringe, and that's about it. This is not anything revolutionary. In regards to companions, there is no wrong answer, but Nautilus Prime with Corded tends to work really well on melee frames, even though you don't really need the grouping. So again, there is no wrong answer in terms of just try to get Tenacious Bond going for the crit damage multiplier. That's pretty good. Contagious Bond, Manifold Bond, really whatever you want will work here. So we're gonna get into the demonstration. I'm gonna get to some yapping, and hopefully you guys enjoy. So thank you so much for watching, and let's get to it. Unfortunately for our demonstration today, we don't have a Void Fisher open, but what are you going to do? We're going to head to the Circulus anyway for a Conjunction Survival demonstration. And we'll talk about the general gameplay loop, how it feels to play the frame. But also, because she was recently the subject of a rework, I wanted to mention I think it was an astounding success. I am incredibly happy. And I've got like some connection to the rework, more than like most. I played a lot of Valkyr as a new player, and one of the things I wanted to do more than anything in the whole wide world was be able to play a Berserker frame with a giant sword. And when I discovered that Hysteria's invulnerability only worked with her Valkyr claws or her talons, I was beyond disappointed. I mean, like, it was so sad. I would use Warcry and I was unstoppable, and I had like pretty good armor, so I was still able to live. But you know, when I got to harder con, I was a bad player, so I'm sure nowadays I could make old Valkyr work. You know, I was just sad because I couldn't use my invulnerability within the ultimate. So people complain about or with other sword rather, and people complained about, especially like when first like playtesters got their hands on the rework. And I gotta say, man, Revenant has brain rotted players so beyond belief. And I don't really blame them necessarily, because yeah, like complete invulnerability, when you're trying to present like challenge in a game with complete invulnerability, like in any survival concept that you release after that, it just looks like child's play. And if you're not compensating for it with damage, then you're just kind of a loser, right? So like, I don't know, people complaining about the death gate, and there obviously probably has been like some buffs and reworks to her ever since that demo. But God, it was like such a, you know, I try not to engage too much in like Warframe discourse, because there's a lot of opinions, and at the end of the day, it's a PvE game, so like people aren't really, the balance is not nearly as important. It's okay for things to be a little OP, but like everyone wanting her invulnerability back as if like we shouldn't slowly be tapering that out of our game was pretty annoying. The death gate is such a better mechanic, and it makes it so, you know, your survivability is no longer tied to having to use your ultimate, which is just such a better system. It's like not even funny. So yeah, here, as you can see, I don't have to ever recast Warcry because I've got Eternal War. The only thing I'm recasting is Nourish, and my energy stays at, oh my god, that's like 1200 energy. That's pretty ridiculous, I'm not gonna lie. Notice I do kind of just rely on slash attacks quite a lot. That's like just, in my opinion, it's the best option. It's been the best option on Valkyr, even like since before her rework. It just feels really good. It's a really good animation. And it's one of the best ways to get like good AoE damage out of claws, which are ordinarily a little bit difficult to make work. Just casting RIPLINE to move around. I've got parkour velocity shards to help me move around as well, which means I'm not RIPLINing everywhere I go. But you might find yourself wanting to do that because it is a really fun playstyle. RIPLINE is not without its clunky, you know, DE magic. Every once in a while, you get caught on things. And you know, the grouping isn't always consistent, so I notice I do kind of try to move around with my legs a lot more than maybe I should for a character that can play like a Spider-Man simulator that groups. But you know, just the bugginess of it, getting caught on things is pretty annoying. And yeah, that's really it. So Warcry stays up forever. It keeps my energy insanely high using Arcane Battery. Just keep recasting Nourish. Nourish, the viral is not, like, in my opinion, super important. A lot of the importance of Nourish comes from like energy econ, comfort. It's nice, you know, in group missions sometimes I can't get all the enemies to myself, and energy econ can be a little bit difficult. The reason Nourish, or the viral on Nourish is super important is because enemies kind of usually die right away, but what the viral does do is it makes it so that if they aren't dying to my first hit on Valkyr like Violence just did, they will be dying to the second because they've got viral procced on them now. I'm doing tons of slash damage, and yeah. So I mean, this is about as basic as it gets, fortunately. Melee frames. Melee is not really my thing, by the way. So like, Valkyr got reworked, and I was not really all that excited. Pretty excited for the heirloom skin. Not gonna lie, pretty shameless about that. But in terms of like excitement, I'm not a huge fan of melee frames. I think they're a little bit boring. That's okay. Like everyone's got their thing. But then I started playing her, and I will admit the playstyle I'm doing right now is not my favorite. I definitely prefer another weapon, you know, my heavy scythe. That's what I was really enjoying. But the claws are like so fun too, just spinning through like a meat grinder. It is so incredibly fun. And this rework, I'm so happy they took this direction with it. One of the biggest things is I hope they do a little bit more with the Deathgate stuff. I know that like it's with Valkyr, it's very on theme, but if they're able to come up with like you know, more additional like creative solutions to health tanks, because ultimately there aren't that many health tanks. Like, if they have no intentions of reworking shield gating or anything like that, then I think that you know, there aren't that many health tanks, right? So just give them some sort of unique additional survivability or buff health tanking, I guess. But you know, the way that Valkyr survives feels totally fine. It feels great. And I think this rework was just such a success, just like a astounding success. I'm so happy about it. And now Valkyr can kind of do, and like, even if you think she's not as strong, which you could probably, you know, easily make the case. Oh, hello? There we go. You could easily make the case for that, I think. Though she feels infinitely better to play from a perspective of like, oh, now I'm not locked into one weapon. Let me try to do like the RIPLINE thing here. I don't think I'm gonna be able to. No, I can't. But yeah, I mean, it's just astounding success from Digital Extremes, and man, it is so fun. So let's get to like a little clue bit, and I'll see you then. Valkyr is just an incredible Warframe. There is really no two ways about it. This reworked version of her, I just love to death. You know, she keeps kind of the same aesthetic, the same gameplay loop for the most part, except just more convenient. RIPLINE being a real ability. You know, back in the day, Valkyr basically had 1.5 abilities: HYSTERIA, WARCRY, and then that was kind of it. That's all you did, and it made for a viable setup. You know, there are a couple Warframes who at least used to be like that, where they really have one ability, maybe half an ability, right? Now Valkyr plays like with such a cohesive kit, and it is so incredibly fun. She's pretty easy to acquire, and you know, she's got an exalted weapon, which is really good for ETA, EDA, any kind of randomized like circuit content. She's really good. If you enjoy the melee Berserker style, Valkyr's absolutely a frame that you should pick up, and just give her a try. There's also a million ways to play her, and if you don't want to play her, like, you just want to play her base kit, you're gonna have such an incredible time. She's pretty easy to get early on if you unlock Jupiter. So yeah, again, DE, fantastic job on this rework. I am genuinely having so much fun. I'd love to hear you guys' opinions down below. Thank you so much for waiting for this video. Enjoy your free Valkyr Prime, and I'll talk to you very, very soon. So much love. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.